Hello, welcome back. Let's see, bookworms and something about flies, but I can't remember. Hello, ladybugs and yellow jackets. I've been working on having a new one to say for the Friday Author Reads. Welcome to Faye Productions. You are here this Friday with your host, as ever, Fairy Princess Lolly. It seems like I haven't been here in so long, even though I'm pretty sure I was just here with you guys last week. So, but I guess done a distortion thing for me today. So I would like to first begin today by by asking you all to because we're doing adjectives, new adjectives, like and subscribe and snuggle the bell. Ringing the bell actually on the YouTubes, it will give you notifications for when we are doing upcoming shows. And since we do 3 shows a week, ring the bell and then you will get a notification of those shows as they come up. So it's Friday is Author Reads, and Sunday is Handmade Home Shopping, and Wednesday is our Faye News segment. And that's not including any little bonus things like our in bulk and other things that we have done. So that is the thing. Please like and subscribe. And then also I want to give a shout out to today's show sponsor, which is Marketplace. And Eclectics Marketplace is a resource for all things Renaissance, medieval, fantasy, Celtic, etc. And they are a site, an index site that is free to use for anybody who wants to go and look up crafters, performers, service providers, guilds, other events. You can search their whole web page for things in your area or by category of, say, clothing or pottery or something you may be looking for in particular. Perfect for shopping for your Ren Fair convention, Valentine's Day people. So if you happen to be one of those things, a crafter or a vendor of some sort, a performer, if you happen to be an event producer and have an event, you actually can get onto their website. They have near on 100 people. They just started last year, so near on 100 different folks have signed up. It's free to do right now. They normally have a $30 annual fee, but they have waived it because of everything in 2020. And you can basically set up a free profile for yourself, your business, your act, whatever it may be, and get uploaded there as kind of a online Yellow Pages, if you will. Check them out. Their information is right there, Eclectics Marketplace. And one other thing before we jump into today's show, we have 3 days left for you guys to go and make your guesses on GNOMEO'S hearts. So for Valentine's Day, we had a DIY craft session last week, myself and Flora the Fairy, and we made sock gnomes, and each of them had, we put and of different sorts. And so all you have to do is just click that link right there. It should also be in the low bar for you guys. And just go over there and guess how many whatever hearts. They all have different kinds of things in them. So just guess how many you think are in each jar. And the closest guesser wins the GNOMEO that goes with the jar. And then we will send those out, hopefully to get to you in time by Valentine's Day. So GNOMEO. It's not where the heck, GNOMEO. It's wherefore art thou. I see you out there. So with all of that said, I think that brings us actually round to the official opening. Welcome to our show, E.C. Ambrose, your author today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks very much for having me, Fairy Princess Lolly. I'm very excited.
You are most welcome. Please, if you will, a little bit, tell us who you are and roughly where you're from. Feel free to give a shout out to the conventions we were just talking about, or your publisher, or whoever you feel you should give shout outs to. Mom.
Sure. So I Elaine, E.C. Ambrose. I'm an author of, I like to describe my brand as knowledge-inspired adventure fiction. So I'm principally known for a historical fantasy series based on medieval surgery called the Elisha Barber, the Dark Apostle series. And I also write archaeological thrillers as E. Chris Ambrose. I have some traditional fantasy novels out. If it's fictional, I've probably tried writing it at some point. So let's see, who are the shout outs? Oh, a little more about me. I live in New England, where we got a foot of snow a couple of days ago and are expecting some more on Sunday. Boy, oh boy. Which makes the convention circuit a little bit easier since, you know, we're all at home. So next week I'll actually be part of the BosCon convention, which is one of the most venerable science fiction fantasy conventions in the U.S. They have a great track for programming and readings. We're having people like Connie Willis and Joe Abercrombie. I'll be giving a presentation on historical astronomical devices, which is one of my passions.
Is it going to be a virtual convention or
it will be a
convention?
virtual convention.
Okay.
Yeah, so $25 gets you the whole weekend.
Nice.
I love doing it in person, but it sounds like they're putting together a great schedule for being online this year. So,
all right. I haven't yet to do a big virtual event like that. But so I'm curious about how they do those. Do you just go to their website to get how does that work? Do you know?
Yep. They have a registration link right on the website, and then it gives you access to the sort of master site with the schedule, and all of the individual links for program items will be basically in your schedule. So you can sort of scroll down the schedule, you can pick things to add to your schedule, or you can just click on whatever sounds good to you during that time block.
Okay, well that seems pretty straightforward. So, okay, well, thank you so much. That was I guess that was the introduction. I hope I didn't interrupt you. There was something you said in the middle of that, and I wanted to comment, but I didn't want to interrupt because
historical astronomical devices, I'm guessing.
What are historical
or medieval surgery?
Oh, I remember now. I was going to say that I loved the cover art of the book, the Apostle one. I'm trying to remember the name of it.
Elisha Barber.
Yes, thank you. That is the one. And I just remember looking at the cover of that going, oh, that looks excellent to read. What kind of a story is that one, if I can ask a little bit?
So this is one of those books that, oftentimes authors complain about their cover art. If they're with a traditional press, they usually don't have a lot of input. But I think that DAW Books did a fantastic job on this cover, because if you look at it and you think, that looks really cool, you'll probably enjoy the book. And if you look at it and think, that looks really creepy, then this book is probably not for you. It is dark historical fantasy about medieval surgery. It's a 14th century barber surgeon who discovers he has an unnatural affinity with death. So I did a deep dive into the research, both on the historical front and then on the surgical and sort of historical medicine front. There's actually a scroll over on my ecambrose.com website. There's a scroll over of the cover where it will tell you what the surgical tools are that are on the table in front of him.
Actually, I was just going to pull it up, just the picture, but let me see if I can. Sorry, will you please say for me your URL so I can type it in, because I can't look at both places at once.
You should be able to get there. Our darkapostle.com might be the easiest one.
Okay, that is what I will do.
And it is a 5-book series now complete for your binge reading pleasure. You don't have to worry that it will be one of those fantasy series that never comes to a close. Oh
no, it's asking me for a login. That is not correct. Let's see. I want to find this because I want to show everybody what this cool cover looks like. I did have it.
A second. I can hold it up. I don't know if this works.
It's okay. I actually have this.
I was going to say, you have an image of probably one of the ones that I sent you.
Yes. This is the one that you sent me. And
Yep.
so I just thought, the thing that really, I saw the guy, and then I saw like the tools, and I was like, those are all like a bunch of medieval torture tools. That's probably so cool. They must be used. I will learn all about them. Like, that is what I thought when I saw this, and I thought of the coolest of all of the covers.
So we were talking a little bit earlier when we were backstage about
Yeah,
costuming and cosplay, and
yeah,
I have been known to cosplay my protagonist, Elisha Barber. I have a medieval style chest full of surgical tools, and sometimes when I'm doing live appearances, I will bring my surgical tools and sort of lay them out for the audience. And then I ask, "Does anybody have a headache,
yeah.
toothache?" I never get any volunteers.
Now, looking at those things are a little terrifying. It's totally true. Yeah, terrifying. They're pretty brutal looking. And to think that at the time, those things were probably, like, brutal as they are, it was better than some alternatives, right? So,
They state of the art,
yes, yes.
Yeah, when the book was first coming out, there's a website where they post pre-release covers, and then they have sort of a group of reviewers who look at the covers and tell you what they think, sort of give a thumbs up or thumbs down on the cover.
Yeah.
And one of the commenters described the book cover as medieval Dexter, and I said, "Yep, nailed it."
I was kind of thinking Sweeney Todd myself, but maybe even a little darker, because Sweeney Todd was pretty straightforward with just a straight razor and a magical
Keep it
chair,
simple.
Yeah, keep it simple. See, there's a funny question out here. Let's see. Oh, I'm not quite sure I'm translating this question properly. Do you use the fact barbers word dentist? That doesn't make any
Dentist,
sense. What?
yeah. Well, it does. And here is how.
To you it makes sense.
At the time, which is 14th century, for a long time, barbers were the sort of go-to corner medical practitioner. They did bloodletting, usually on the advice of surgeons or physicians who were at the big hospitals, and they performed a lot of basic operations. And tooth pulling was one of them. So tooth pulling, bloodletting, and also hair cutting. So it's a lot of fun doing the research for those.
Hair cutting. We'll just stop at that. Like, all the rest of
one-stop
those
shopping.
things don't sound good. I don't understand how bloodletting ever became. I mean, I guess with like the four humors, and that's sort of where that evolved. It seems like it is so obvious that bloodletting is terrible for you. So I don't understand.
One of the reasons that they would do bloodletting is, for instance, if a woman's period was too strong. Because obviously, if you're losing too much blood, what you need to do is lose more blood.
Lose more blood? That's backwards.
Yeah,
okay.
The four humors were a holdover from the 1st century AD in Rome.
Yes.
A physician called Galen, and kind of lingered for a long time, which was very unfortunate. So I am not sure where Lolly went. Hopefully she is on the way back.
I'm here. What happened?
There she is.
Oh my gosh. I guess it's me.
Excellent.
That probably answers that question, doesn't it? Did you guys? I don't know. I tried to put the link just now into the chat, and then I disappeared. So I hope you guys got it here. I'll put it there again just in case, because that was really weird. Sorry about that. So, excuse me if I'm a little bit of a frog in my throat. So what is the craziest thing that you have found in researching your books, like in your research for this? Do you think is like one of the craziest facts or tidbits that you have discovered?
Wow. So many possibilities. I mean, a lot of them, of course, are around the medicine. Here's one of the crazy things in sort of a roundabout way. So one of the most feared operations in the history of medical science is trepanation. It literally means that someone's going to cut a hole in your head. And there's a misconception, very popular misconception that the reason that this operation was performed was to let out evil spirits. Like, if you were having a migraine or something, then they would perform this operation and it would let out the evil spirits. Well, it turns out that during the Middle Ages, and in fact for most of the history of this operation, the reason it was performed is the reason it is still done today, which is that you have an impacted skull fracture. So the bone of the skull is damaged, it's impinging on the brain, and the doctor needs to basically remove that section of bone or drill in and sort of elevate the bone to relieve the pressure on the brain. And we have surviving surgical texts from the period describing how and why to do the operation. So we have this conception that the Middle Ages were sort of all backwards and all about superstition, and yet the surgeons of the time were trying their hardest to save lives. Many people who had the operation actually survived and lived for several years afterwards. So,
wow. Huh. That is definitely an interesting fact. So it doesn't sound great, but to have done to you,
still
I don't
wouldn't
know.
be your
Like,
first choice.
I'm pretty sure that like local anesthesia wasn't a thing back then. So can you just imagine laying there and feeling somebody cut into your skull with some kind of a medieval bone saw so that they can, or like one of the, you know, drilling into like you would bore a hole in wood, except for it's for bone, you know.
Except it's your head.
Yes.
Aren't you glad you came?
I actually find this stuff super fascinating myself, so I'm pretty into this. Like one of the cool places years ago when I went to Italy, one of the coolest places that I went was actually a historical museum of torture, and it was in Siena, and we just happened to be towards the end of the day, so we were the last people in this little tiny kind of hole in the wall museum with crazy torture devices, and we didn't have to worry about any other people, which was awesome. So we just got to
yeah.
It was super cool. I was like, oh, this is amazing. So I actually find all of this, like the line between torture and medicine back then seems pretty clear. Not clear, blurry is what I'm trying to say. So well, okay, so today, tell us about the book that you're going to be reading from, and then I will turn the screen over to you here in a minute, and just if you will give us a little context for what we're about to hear.
Sure. So the book I'm reading from tonight is one of my releases from last year, 2020, which was not a great year to release books. I had a lot of events and interesting things planned to help support the launch that obviously got canceled or moved or anyhow. So the book is called The King of Next Week.
Out though, like so many authors didn't even get, 2020 killed a bunch of stuff last year. So
it's true. It's true.
Anyway,
I'm hoping we're over that now. So The King of Next Week, it came out from Guardbridge Books, which is a small press based out of Scotland. Fabulous editor over there, David Stokes, whom I love very much. And it's a historical fantasy novella about a Civil War veteran who gets the crazy notion to ship a load of ice from the Maine coast to the coast of Africa in search of custom and people were making a lot of money at that time shipping ice from New England, which I think is just one of the strangest historical facts ever. The British Raj, the reason why the Brits who were running India in the 1800s were able to have cold drinks is New England ice. So when I discovered that, I had to write a book about it. And this is the result. But of course, he ships from Maine with a load of ice and comes home with a Djinn wife.
Djinn, like Djinn.
Correct.
Okay. A magical. He comes home with I Dream of Jeannie. They did the same thing though from Alaska down the West Coast as well during that same period. At least that is what I am led to understand. So
yeah,
I didn't understand how it worked at first. I mean, how do you ship ice without it all melting? But I guess if you ship it in huge, large bricks or blocks enough that it actually melts slower, and so That is what
Yep.
I've been led to understand, so that you can like
Pack it in
bring
straw
barges
or
down.
sawdust, and yeah, you have big blocks. Sometimes double-hulled boats, so there was kind of extra insulation, and some of it would melt on the way.
Of course.
Um, but you got enough there that people made
You can
their
turn around and
fortune
sell it in smaller
selling
blocks. Yeah,
ice.
that's really weird.
Yeah.
And India and Africa are hot. Oh man.
And
All
far.
right. So he comes home with a wife who is a djinn. Okay. Um, it, was there anything more you wanted to tell us before we turn it over to you?
Uh, it started out with a visit that I made to the area that he comes from, called Phippsburg, Maine. Fascinating little peninsula. The coast of Maine is sort of all of these little, they look like fjords almost, long, skinny peninsulas that have been occupied for hundreds of years, possibly thousands, depending on the local native tribes. And discovering more of the history of that place really informed where the story came from and where it ended up going.
Okay, so for everybody watching at home, I am about to turn the screen over here to Elaine, and while they are reading, you can put questions for Elaine into the comments. I will be on mute, but I will be in the comment section with you guys, and if you have questions or things that you want to put forth, just put them in the comments, and then we can take those questions after the reading is done. After that, we have our classic giveaway for a book. So with that said, I will give you the whole screen with this magic button. Ta-da! And I'm going to go on mute.
Okay, Lolly has waved her magic wand, and now you are my captive audience, as it were. So this is Chapter 1, June 1866. Rain and wind lashed the schooner Diana as she heeled into the gale. Waves crashed against the hull, but these waves felt different, a subtle change that resonated through the decks and lines. Land was near, deflecting the water. With a surge of excitement, Captain Matthew Percy leaned far out from the rail, right hand clenched to the netting, left hand clasping his Union cap to his head. A safety line dug into his waist, the other end pegged near the bowsprit, as the Diana heaved upward over a wave and crashed down again on the other side, adding a needless shower of ocean to the soaking he'd already earned. Lightning snapped through the sky. His skin tingled, the hairs on his arms standing. For a moment, Matt held his breath, suspended between the bucking ship and the lightning's veil of fire. In that flare of brilliant light, he saw the island that shouldn't be there. "Land ho! Hard a starboard! Ready all hands!" he shouted, his voice already hoarse. Again, the ship heaved beneath him, and he absorbed the impact with bent knees. "There is no land anywhere near, Captain," the purser, John Crowley, hollered back. The pitching sea tossed Crowley against the rail like a soldier caught by a cannon's blast. "You've seen the chart." "Oh, there's land," muttered Tahari, the pilot they'd picked up at Tenerife. He crouched at the rail near Matt's feet, staring outward, oblivious to the rain. Demon-haunted land. Spirits to drive you mad. "He's already mad," Crowley shouted. Matt turned about, riding the tossing ship as if she were a wild mare, and he were determined to tame her. "Will, hard a starboard, ready with the sea anchor." "Aye, Captain." His first mate's voice boomed through the rain. His grin flashed like lightning across his dark face. "Crowley, back to work." Crowley glared, but he obeyed, pulling himself along the lines back to the waiting crew. Crowley objected to the cargo, to the season, but most of all, to serving under a Negro mate. Matt had half a mind to bind the purser to the sea anchor and chuck him overboard. But Crowley was old man Lee's, and besides, he needed all hands if he would harness the gale. If they could get to leeward of the island, it might offer some shelter, at least. If not, they'd be halfway round the Horn before they could get their bearings. On the other hand, he'd heard the Indies had a strong market for ice. When the swells rose, Matt caught another glimpse of that land, closer now, a twin-peaked rise, maybe as long as the whole of Phippsburg. The wind rushed them on, and he clung to his cap all the more. Stupid to be wearing it on a day like this, but the damn thing had brought him through the war. Pray God it would carry him through the storm. Rain lashed down his neck. Red hair curled limp against his cheeks, but he dare not spare his grip to push it back. "Should be me up there," Tahari said. And you'd guide us to the Demon Isle? I don't think so. The point of land rushed toward them in a series of flashes, though none so powerful as the one that had dazzled him a few moments ago. With each stroke of lightning, Matt expected to hear the crack of a mast, but the jagged strokes struck upon the island's peak, making him wonder if Tahari might have the right of it. Demon-haunted. Matt had demons to spare, thanks to the war. They did not scare him anymore. Besides, who had more need of ice than a people who lived, so it was said, in fire? Over his shoulder, Matt called, "Ready!" "Aye!" Will roared back. With each flash, Matt counted. Thunder rolled across the sky overhead. Another flash. There! Now! He swept the hat from his head and waved his arm. "Will, do it now!" "Heave! Heave!" Will ran down the deck and back again, an extra set of hands as the crew lifted the rope and sailcloth sea anchor and hurled it over the rail. The rope groaned against the capstan. Matt held his breath, praying it would hold. Then, with the sharp grace that defined her, the ship swung about. Her bow aimed along the island's sheltered side. A ridge of stone rose up like those formidable clouds that had heralded the storm. Then the mountain sheared into the wind, cliffs towering too close. Diana swept alongside the stone, blessedly slowing. The storm still battered him, but the wind died to a frustrated howl. He had dared the storm and won. His shoulder aching with remembered pain, Matt unbent his fingers, not releasing his grip, but stretching out his hand, his muscles throbbing. How long had he been hanging on? He allowed himself a long breath as his men, his ship, his cargo, slipped behind the island to safety. Again, the water changed beneath him. Then Diana shuddered to a halt with the gritty sound of a sandbar far below. Thrown off balance, Matt snatched for the netting, but his numb fingers failed him, and he tumbled from the rail into the sea. Water sucked him down as he plunged toward the sand. By the distant flash of lightning, he saw a wash of gleaming red in the sand beneath him. Crimson glass, apparently swept from the shores above and hoarded by the waves. He struck the sand, his breath rushed into darkness. A woman gazed down at him, her face glowing faintly, leaving a ripple in the air as she moved her head, an after-image, as if he had gazed too long at the sun. Her skin looked by turns darker than teak or mahogany, then swirled with ruby, reminding him of blown glass still moving in a smoky furnace. Her eyes flickered like a forge's light, her gaze arrested by something near his head, and her lips parted in a breath of wonder. His heart fell, wishing it were his face that captured her, but still, she smiled, and that was enough. "What are you dreaming?" Will's voice. Matt kept his eyes closed, heat pouring down on him from that distant beauty. Very well, it was the sun that warmed him, not some glowing maiden with long dark hair and flaming eyes. His head and arm throbbed, then a soothing cold settled against his skin, hands pressing the hard chill to his shoulder. Ice to cool his fever. "Ooh, that's good. Thank you, Nurse Barton." Will's laughter echoed around him. Somewhere close by, water tumbled, and waves stroked a gentle shore. "You're not in the Morris Island Hospital, Captain, and I'm no Clara Barton." "More's the pity." Matt cracked open one eye. "I'm not dead, then?" "Not this time." Will sat back with a wince of his own, rubbing his back. He had a long face, deep-set eyes, and dense curly hair no wind could ruffle. Overhead, a makeshift structure of planks, branches, and foreign leaves kept the sun from burning Matt a shade to match his own hair. His mouth and nostrils stung with salt. "You reeled me in?" "Like a codfish and twice as floppy. You ever thought about being short?" Will held up his hand, palm down, as if he could press Matt into a more compact form. "Sure, I thought of it. Then I thought, when I get back to Phippsburg, old man Lee's bound to cut me down to size." He moved to sit up, and pain swept through from his right shoulder. So he sagged again, back to the blanket-covered sand. "I keep hoping he'll give up on that." Will moved to sit beside Matt in the shade. He mopped sweat from his brow with a square of gingham so worn that the red checks were a uniform pale gold. "Don't count on it." They shared a look that finished the conversation. "If you hadn't insisted on hiring me and those other Negroes," Will would say, "your folk would be perfectly happy to have you around." "If we would have both died with Colonel Shaw, I wouldn't have felt the need," Matt would reply. After the 54th led the charge on Fort Wagner, Matt found Will still alive in the press of the dead and dying. Before the assault, The rebels vowed to bury the white officers and the Negro soldiers together in a common grave. And with the Union retreat, everyone knew the rebels would bloody well make good on their oath. Will and Matt had limped out of that nightmare together. They wouldn't have made it as far as the field hospital without each other, and Matt was not about to let go now. What's our disposition? Will straightened up and squared his shoulders to something like military bearing, in spite of his torn uniform and weary features. Good and stuck, sir. Work's begun on repairing the topsails and fitting the new rear mast, the one that had gone down in the first violent assault of the storm, as they rushed to reef the sails. Some minor repairs, 3 crewmen injured, Parker with a broken leg, McCobb caught a splinter as long as your arm, and yourself knocked to the head and popped your shoulder. The usual damned injury that wouldn't let him be. Matt traced the sling on his right arm with his left hand, then followed it up to where a lump of ice wrapped in cloth sat cooling the ache. You popped it back? It wasn't so easy this time. Will gazed out toward the ship. Crowley's got a bad case of the grumbles, and Tahari's been in the aft cabin since we beached, muttering about demons. We've already got one. Crowley. Who's the idiot brought him on board? That'd be you, sir. Did you just call your captain an idiot? No, sir. I just don't like to contradict my commander. Will grinned. Shut up. The entire crew, top to bottom, comprised the most motley assembly of sailors in all of Maine, the only ones willing to sign on to Matt's dream. In spite of Frederick Tudor's success down in Massachusetts a few years back, many sailors still held that a cargo of ice would melt en route, sinking the boat from the inside out. Aside from Lee, every shipyard in Phippsburg turned him down, all the faster when he explained his plan to have a mostly Negro crew to ship to the African coast. Matt held the bundle of ice to his shoulder and pushed toward sitting. Will caught him about the shoulders and got him steady. Diana sat upright across a sandbar at the base of a stream that ran down from the forested slope behind. The 3-masted schooner with her high prow and smooth lines remained the most beautiful ship he'd ever seen. Lee was a bastard, but he had some fine shipwrights. Aside from the upper mast, she looked awfully good for what she'd been through. 3 injuries in a gale, and one of those was the same injury over again. Well, he could hardly count that. Good and stuck, you said. Look at her keel, how deep she's mired. Even the tide didn't lift her. I don't know how we'll get her afloat, except... Will shrugged. He rubbed his bit of gingham between his fingers. Except we unload the cargo. How much of it? They looked at the ship together, shallow water lapping at her planks, while the crew worked on deck or on the shingle nearby. Matt needed no reply. He could see the answer just by looking at her. Too much. Let's hope the demons need ice. Beg your pardon? Will reached over and gently prodded Matt's temple. Yep, knocked on the head, sure enough. I'm surprised that hard skull of yours didn't knock straight through the hull and sink us yourself. I'm a madman. You knew that before you ever came to Phippsburg. Will nodded. Me, I'm resting up and making nice with the nurses. You're playing with your ice pack and dreaming of cold cash. Everybody flirts with nurses, Will, but they marry the rich ones. Where's Tahari? Tell him to get the demons out here. Dreamer, Will snorted. You've always been the king of next week. I dreamed us this far, didn't I? Will took a leisurely look around, from the endless sea before them to the grounded ship and the restless crew. Oh yeah, you sure did. So that's the opening of The King of Next Week, historical fantasy novella.
Whoop, and we're back. Together again on the screen. Well, we do have some questions out here in the audience, and an interesting rumor. Here it is. I heard all of her works are firsthand accounts told from a different point of view, so no one knows she is immortal. Tell us, not to put you on the spot, but to put you on the spot like aliens. Is it true? Are you immortal?
Now, Clint, I'm going to have to come out there and we're going to have a talking to. You're not supposed to say these things, not live on the air. Oh, my goodness.
Now everybody will know. Once people know you're immortal, then it's, nothing but work,
it's just work.
It's how you know about all these things. It's how you know about all these things. What was it that you had said right in the beginning of the show? Before medical device, we got talking about medical devices. It was a space something or other.
Astronomical devices.
That's it. Astronomical devices. I'm curious to hear about those, but I want to go to the comments first, viewers, before I indulge myself.
Sure.
Uh-oh. Clint is expressing remorse, but I don't know. I mean, we're talking about a writer of a medieval barber, and so you might have to show your remorse with a pound of flesh.
I mean, the man has read most of my books. He knows what he could be in for. Honestly, he does. Just for that, man, I am making you my hero.
I was gonna say careful, otherwise you might get an okay, let me scroll back here just a second. Here we go. I think this is okay. Writing the unique and amazing style that you do you find it easier to write in a certain environment, like a library or a sunroom, perhaps a barbershop, or a dungeon?
I tried the barbershop, but the quartet was really getting. So, I try to
gives
cultivate.
me like commercial images, right? Like every time you try to write, like suddenly four dudes, heads, they appear. And they, Go ahead.
So yeah, the backdrop you're seeing here is not a Zoom background. This is my actual office where I am surrounded by many research books and other paraphernalia, some of which I could show you if you get curious. I have some tiny Roman vessels on the desk in front of me. I have an astrolabe over there, which is one of those astronomical devices that we can talk about or not. So this is where I do most of my writing. When I can, I try to at least visit the areas that I'm writing about. And it's certainly enjoyable to be able to write in those places as well. So there are certain places that I sort of dream of having a writing retreat where I could just, bring my notebooks and my computer and make fun fiction or make bad things happen to people who don't exist, depending on your point of view.
Depending on how much coffee I've had.
Right, but from the writer's sort of work perspective, I try to make sure that I could write anywhere. That I'm not too attached to saying, oh, I have to have a certain chair, I have to have a certain setup, or things have to be just so, because if that's the way you roll as a writer, then something bad happens the minute your chair breaks or whatever, you're kind of sunk.
Yeah.
So I try to be flexible, but it's certainly more enjoyable to write in some of those unique places.
I thought an astrolabe was the device that old sailors used to use in order to navigate.
Indeed, it is.
Oh, yay. I know something.
Yeah, so I built this one from a kit that I got off Etsy, because Etsy is a wonderful good thing. And they actually will make a custom backplate for you that is your location, because the backplate is based around stars that you can see from the area that you live in. And then, you can use the
How does it work?
Adelaide. So there's these two little holes on the back that you can use for sighting. I'm not doing a good job lining it up. That you can use for making sightings of the stars that you're using to navigate. So you have to kind of know, in general, which stars you would be looking for. You have to be quite familiar with the night sky. Most navigators nowadays use a sextant instead of an astrolabe, obviously. And the term sextant, like quadrant, comes from a quarter or a sixth, and they were originally a quarter or a sixth of an astrolabe, because you don't necessarily need all of this information for general travel purposes. Yeah. So you would use your device to take a sighting. You'd have to know what day it is, and there's a different way to set the dial for which day of the month it is, so that you kind of know what you're looking for.
Cool.
And if you know the time of the day, then you can find a particular star if you wanted to look for a particular star that you need to make sighting of. Or if you know which star you're looking at, then you can find the other information. So.
What is it supposed to actually tell you?
So this is where we need to do the zoom in. So we have degrees. around the outside that tells you how many degrees above the horizon the object is that you're looking for. And the little pointers in the middle here are
Other
for
direction.
particular stars. They actually
No,
have
hold it in front of
names.
your face. There we go.
There we go.
Ah!
Now you can't see me at all. So the little pointers here have the names of the stars on them, so that you can tell which, you would move the device. And now I can't move it because I'm on the right spot.
Oh, cool. One of these Roman vessels that you mentioned that were right in front of you, if I may. And then I'll take another
Roman
question from the
vessels.
audience.
She just wants to play with my toys. You should totally come over sometime, and you can play with my toys.
As long as I can bring some of my own. When you said vessel,
sure, I want to see your toys too.
I thought like a mini urn. That was what I thought. I did not think a boat.
You did not think of.
I probably should have.
Triremes.
Oh, how cute. That thing is adorable. Did you make those, like assemble them?
So my husband actually did. He's a gamer. So I've been doing research for a historical novel now that is set in the late Roman Republic, and I needed to understand more about their vessels. And I know somebody was sort of asking some questions about navigation and ship terminology and such. So sailing ships have long been an interest of mine, and I had a grandfather who had a sailboat that we used to visit up in Seattle many summers. So that was sort of how probably I got my interest. But yeah, when my husband and I were talking about better ways that I could visualize what the ships were like and what it would be like to be on them, and he found a game company that produced these sort of scale miniatures of the Roman era vessels. He also has some that we had 3D printed as well. So those are a little further back on the desk. So now I can stage little battles.
Okay, here we have what authors have inspired and influenced you the most?
This is an interesting question because I feel like the inspirations and the influences are possibly two different sets of people. One of my favorite authors is Mary Doria Russell, who wrote a book called The Sparrow, which is a very famous science fiction novel. It's kind of tough.
The ending is not happy for anybody.
It's emotionally gripping. Like, they're supposed to be making a TV series out of this, and I cannot imagine how they're going to pull that off. But a lot of writers get inspired to write because they read something that's terrible and they think, I could write a better book than this. But when I read The Sparrow, what I thought was, this is what a book is meant to be. This is how it is meant to function inside of your brain. It's supposed to expose you to new ideas. It's supposed to challenge you. It's not meant to be comforting. It's meant to be engaging, enthralling, grab you by the throat and drag you places you didn't know that you needed to go. So definitely Mary Doria Russell is one of my inspirations. My influences probably came from a rather different department because I've been a longtime reader of sort of epic fantasy type works. Tad Williams was certainly one of my early enthusiasms, and Stephen R. Donaldson. I love The Mirror of Her Dreams. A lot of those books are sort of what filled my consciousness, along with The Lord of the Rings and some of the classics that we were reading at home at the time. So nowadays I try to read more deliberately the kinds of authors that I'd like to be like. The people that I want somebody to say, oh, if you enjoy that person, then you should read E.C. Ambrose. So trying to build up the mulch in my garden beds.
A place that inspires you.
Any place I'm researching now. You've probably gathered from the things that I've said so far that I'm kind of a research junkie, and if I lean the right direction, that whole row of red things that you can see on the top of that shelf, those are all maps, and they are extremely detailed Ordnance Survey maps for little places in England, because most of the Elisha series is set in England. So every time I find a new place that I want to write about, I start by getting the maps. And then I really delve into them and look at, like, what are the most interesting things, excuse me, what are the place names that you can find on them. The Ordnance Survey maps have things like standing stones and ruins and moats and castles and just the incredible richness of place. So I did kind of the same thing when I was researching Phippsburg for this book. I had the opportunity to go there, of course, and to spend some time just traveling around the island. And in the back of the Historical Society, they have one of those, two-room historical museums that a lot of old New England towns do. And I got to spend a day there just reading up and doing research. They have a huge map that shows all 192 cemeteries. And this is not a big place. There may be maximum a few hundred people living on this little peninsula, and they have 192 marked cemeteries.
That's and a lot of cemeteries.
Consist of only one grave. Some of them are family plots. So I could just sit there and stare at that map for a very long time. I'm not sure that's the answer that Jack was looking for, but
what places that inspire you? There you go.
Wherever I'm going to next.
Wherever you're going to next. Set course. So now is the time that I would like to say to everybody out there, because I have one more question, and so please put your name into the comments at this time if you want to be entered to win a free book, so that I can put you on the wheel of win, and we will spin here in a few minutes. I'm going to do this last question to give everybody time to get their names in, but it is that time of the show. So the last one here is kind of it sort of came in two parts. So I'm going to actually, because I think you sort of already commented about how much research you've had to do to write about naval themes, but there was a question here, and the question was, I'm just going to put up the second half of it, but I'll read the first half, which was, do you have rules for your demons in your books? And then it was followed up with, are they just monsters, or are they religion based, or how does that work?
So one of the cool things about working with mythologies and belief systems is doing the research there as well. So when I was writing the Elisha series, I was doing research into historical conceptions of magic, which was very interesting stuff. Not sort of contemporary views of magic, but what people in that time and place actually believed. And so the demons that are referenced in The King of Next Week are the jinn, and the Islamic conception of demons, angels, and mankind is that the demons were made of fire, and they are beings of fire, and that is why they are as capricious as they are, and they are called the jinn. And angels were made from air, which is why they are as sort of light and refined as they are. And then, of course, mankind was made from mud, from the earth. So if you look at the cover of the book, actually sort of references that earth and fire imagery, and there are some references within it to that mythos that he is sort of made of earth and she is made of fire. So there are rules that they follow, most of which are based on the research that I did into Islamic understandings of the jinn and kind of what they did and what they were like.
That is interesting, because they also actually have crossover into the fairy realms as being sometimes, some consider them to be fire elemental types of fae, the jinn. Mm-hmm. So that is pretty cool. Okay, you guys. So with that said, I got Clinton and I got Valiant correctly this time. Closer. I always say her name wrong, but she's a regular watcher here. Also, I just want to say as well, if you want to be automatically entered into every single drawing that we do here, we do them on Fae News from vendors, and then we also do them on Fridays with our author reads. If you want to be automatically entered, you can get a maximum of 2 extra entries by joining the Patreon and or joining the YouTube, for a total of 3 maximum per person. So, okay, I see you, Newt. Thanks. Let me get you onto the list here really quick. And then you will always be entered. You don't have to be present necessarily to win, because we will contact you after the show just to make sure. And what? Jack says that some consider the Jinn to be aliens.
Alien.
No. I now I see that guy. Aliens. I love watching that guy. His hair cracks me up, actually. Yes, like his hair cracks me up. Like, I love watching that guy for some reason. But I'm curious now what the alien connection to the Jinn is. Well, I mean, I guess that's not too far off, though, because a lot of Indian mythology is filled with, very interesting characters that are, blue and throwing fire and fire bolts and flying around on carpets. And yeah.
So cool connections, right? So the other book that I came out with last year, which was called The Assassin's Throne and is one of my Bone Guard International Thriller series, is about the throne of Solomon. And so I also did some research into legends about Solomon, King Solomon from the Bible. And he has a lot of interesting mythology in the Islamic tradition, including that he had basically captive demons that would do his bidding. And so it kind of immediately went back to the research I had done for The King of Next Week into some of the things that the Jinn were supposed to be able to do and the things that they did in service to those who could enslave them. And King Solomon is supposed to be one of those people. So theoretically, there are jars containing Solomon's demons that are still hidden somewhere in the deserts.
I feel like there should just be a story of a clumsy house brownie. It's like dusting the jars, bumps the shelf, the whole thing falls, they slide off the end, crash open. Just that would, yeah. I'm thinking, what a terrible way to contain your demons, by putting them in a jar that's probably like hermetically sealed with the seals of Solomon or something, right? Like, no. What if it just breaks? Then what? Then it's like evil everywhere.
Oops.
I know. And then there it is, and you have to suddenly call in some supernaturals or something to go get it back. So with that said, I think that's everything. Let me grab our screen, our wheel of win, if you will. Ooh. I know. This is actually one of my favorite parts. I always like to give prizes to people. So as you guys can see, here are all of the names, plus everybody that put their names in the comments that I was able to see. And so I will now submit this. The wheel picks 50 of these at random, and then we spin. Boom. Was this for a physical copy today? Rebecca Swanson, congratulations.
Woo!
You are the winner.
Rebecca. So yes, I can send you the ebook format of your choice, or the editor, the publisher is willing to send a physical copy if you would prefer to have a physical copy. But that would probably take a little bit longer. So,
right, because
it's up to you what format you prefer to read in.
Yes, well, thank you for being one of our patrons, Rebecca. So that is where we know her from. So, and also, is there anything that you'd like to say before we let you go this afternoon?
Thank you all so very much for coming. I appreciate you sharing the adventure this evening, and definitely reach out on social media and say hi. I always love to connect with more fans. And yes, thank you very much, Fairy Princess Lolly, for hosting me.
Of course. Thank you so much for coming and being on the show. As a reminder to everybody, your information and links to where they can purchase your books are in the low bar. You can click on them before, during, after the show. They will stay up. They will not go away. Please do so. If you do purchase a book and you do it from a place where you can leave a review, such as Amazon, please leave the review. It always helps indie authors so much to have those left for you guys. So with that said, that brings us pretty much around to the close of the show. We're on Friday. That means we will be back with you on Sunday for handmade home shopping. And then, of course, next week for Faye News on Wednesday. And I will bid you all then good afternoon. And don't forget to go guess GNOMEO'S hearts. Goodbye, everybody. Have a good
Goodbye.
weekend. Yes, and we'll see you on Sunday. Bye-bye.